Hello, and welcome to Finding Your North Star, the HGKC podcast series where we talk to prominent business people about their experiences and challenges of innovation. Co founder and fellow director of HGKC, Peter Quintana, was appointed as a non exec to the board of Somerset Chamber of Commerce at the end of 2024. And it was his learning more about the wealth and range of businesses across the county that sparked this podcast series. Situated between Bristol to the north and Devon to the south, and bordered by the Severn and Sea to the west, and Wiltshire and Dorset in the east, Somerset is a county of contrasts. It's rural, but with one of the biggest concentrations of precision engineering in Europe. It's a county with a declining birth rate that many people retire to, but with opportunities for skilled work such as those offered at Hinkley Point C and by Agratas on the former Royal Ordnance factory site that are turning Bridgewater into a boomtown. There is no traditional university, but it has several highly innovative colleges and university centres that are contributing to skills development for young and old alike. But there is a skills crisis. Somerset certainly presents a unique combination of challenges and opportunities. I'm Sarah Chilcott, Director at HGKC, and I'm delighted that in this podcast we'll be exploring the northern part of Somerset with Jonathan Lawson, CEO at Butcombe Group. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you very much, Sarah. It's been here.
Great to have you. And in fact, I should be saying thank you very much for welcoming me to your site. We're actually recording this interview today at your state-of-the-art brewery in Rington, North Somerset.
Yeah.
If you could kick off by just explaining to me a little bit more about the brewery and its history and how it's evolved over the years.
Yeah, I'd be delighted to. It's always a pleasure to talk about the business and the heritage of the brand. So, Buckham Brewery, in effect, is a great story. It pretty much started out in the outbuildings of a garden in Buckham, founded by Simon Whitmore and his wonderful wife, Maureen. And in 1978, they started brewing Butcombe Original in the back garden. They converted some of the outbuildings, etc., in that facility. And they were some of the original kind of craft brewers before craft brewing was even a term. For those that experience all the wonderful craft pubs within the Bristol area, it was quite rebellious at that point in time. The main brewers were really the long-standing regional family brewers. People weren't just coming out and starting up a brewery in their back garden, but that's exactly what they did. They focused on the recipe for Butcombe Original. And it's an incredible story that for 19 years, all they actually brewed was one beer. It was Butcombe Original, which is why you then find people still to this day who pretty much will say, I was born and raised on Butcombe Original. It's an incredibly popular beer. It's really high quality. It's a great recipe and became incredibly successful. And that went from strength to strength. It eventually required a larger facility, such was the demand for that bit, which is then we moved to the Rington site in 2005. And its popularity and successes continue thereafter. So that's kind of a very, very brief snapshot into the history of Butcombe and how that came about.
Yeah, fascinating. Thank you. And as a local girl, I think I can vouch for it's a popular brew in our house.
Yeah,
But it's really interesting to hear the history. And I wondered, Buckham is not far from here for those that know the county.
indeed.
So I wondered if that was the origins of things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, fascinating. And in terms of being based here, you mentioned Bristol. We're in the northern part of the county, as I mentioned,
Yeah.
not far from Bristol. And how does the location here in Somerset, what does it mean to be based here for Buckham?
It means pretty much, it's not an overstatement, it means everything to us. I arrived in early 2019, January, and whenever I've gone into a business, for me, a key part of my job is to really understand the brand, understand the heritage, the legacy, what a brand and a product means to people. And we did a lot of work and research, and the link towards Buckham and Somerset and Bristol was very acute. The awareness of the brand. It actually took me quite by surprise. And we obviously have pubs as well as brewery, but just talking to our customers in our pubs, talking to customers where we sell directly to those pubs, our free trade customers. it bowled me over really, and it really was an identity to Bristol and Somerset. And so that's what developed into our tagline, which is "We are Bristol born," and we talk about that in very loudly and very clearly. And that's integrated completely into our pub strategy and our strategy around food and drink. So alongside the brewing business, we have a fantastic estate of pubs, a large number of which are in the Bristol and Somerset area.
Mm.
They're great pubs. They're local pubs by local people, serving local people wherever possible, serving local food and drink. And so, if we can, we will find Somerset producers for our pubs, not just the ones in Somerset. We'll then take them across the southern counties where we operate. And so, we've got Arthur David in Chew Valley, one of our largest suppliers. Better Valley strawberries that we use, rapeseed oil that we use comes from Somerset. The lamb we use comes from Somerset. So it's really not words for us that this is our heritage. And, if you walk downstairs into the brewery, you've got Barry Badger, who's still brewing here, who was one of the original brewing team. And again, these are the kind of people that you spend time with when you join a business. And the passion for what we do and the pride in what we do is absolutely there. And everything from that through to the water. 50% of the water that we use comes up through from the Mendip Hills. It's absolutely ingrained in the business. It's who we are.
Yeah, really, really interesting. And I had a similar conversation with Sandy Luck over at Oldwick Estate,
Yeah.
and she echoed that very much and talked about that kind of network of producers
Yeah.
locally. They're obviously taking your beer into their
Yeah.
events venue
Yeah.
and working with Elvis and Lycross
Yeah.
Cheese and,
Yeah.
and Hare Valley and so on. So there's a real connection locally in terms of those businesses.
Completely, and they are fantastic businesses, and you've got, I mean, it's incredible, really. It's quite kind of low key, but you've got us here, and then you've got Thatcher's just down the road, which is an incredible success story. Great neighbours of ours. We work with them, great suppliers, but it's just kind of subtly tucked away down little quiet roads, both for ourselves and Thatcher's. But they're brilliant success stories, brilliant brands and businesses.
Yeah, amazing. And can I touch on something that you mentioned earlier? So you talked about the local pubs and local customers. And I'm struck, we talked earlier in this episode about Buckham Original,
Yeah.
but I'm struck as I walk in to see the kind of full range of different products that you have, different types of beers that you have on offer now. So where did that innovation come from? How does that, how's that?
That's a really good question. I mean, we love Buckham Original. It's a fantastic car scale and it keeps really well, really high quality. But we're also very conscious, particularly kind of 6 years ago when we set out the revised strategy for the business. Car scale overall is a declining market. We've actually grown market share. So we've held that business, which is one of the reasons we're number one in the Southwest, top 10 UK car scale. But it's fair to say that car scale appeals to a more older customer. And we want to, in our pubs and other people's pubs, we want to welcome people from all age groups, all types of customers, all segments. And so for us, we said, well, we need a breadth of portfolio in our offer that suits a broader segment of customers. And if you want to carry on drinking Buckham Original, that's fantastic. Or Rare Breed, our collaboration with Adam Henson, fantastic. But we now have really good premium 4% lager, Underful, based upon the Underful docks in Bristol. We have Cool Tales, which is based upon an original fable from a crocodile being seen in the harbour within Bristol. We've introduced Low and No, so we have Gorham Zero. Gorham based upon the story of the giant just outside Bristol. So that's a modern range of keg ales and lager for us. It's always interesting as well because people, you talk about a brewer such as ourselves brewing lager, and people will immediately go, "Oh, well, lager." One of my learnings is that lager actually takes twice as long for us to brew as a normal ale does. So the fermentation process it is quite lengthy. So it's a cracking product, and we've been delighted by the success of those products. It's exactly what the market and young customers want to see, and even older customers like myself can enjoy it as well.
Yeah, great. And yes, seconded. So moving, I suppose, on to that bottling rather than
Yeah,
the keg ales. I mentioned in my introduction that Bridgewater is turning into a boom town with the redevelopment of the overall ordnance suit Bridgewater, I understand. So I just wondered what you're seeing on the ground in terms of changes.
So the brief history is that we moved to Rington site in 2005, grew the business. The overall business and group was acquired by a long-term investor called Caledonia, 2016. That's still our investor now. And they provided the necessary investment for a key part of our strategy, which is at that point in time, we were still brewing and distributing from this site. And as you can imagine, it's quite a tight site.
Mhm.
And actually, to enable the further growth of the business, what we wanted to do was separate brewing from the distribution and then also in-house, in effect, our packaging for our bottling and our kegging. And that's what the site at Bridgewater enabled us to do. So all of the lorries that deliver to all of our pubs, so our own pubs, our tenanted pubs, the 500 customers we serve in the free trade, they all now come out of Bridgewater site. And in addition, we invested number of millions of pounds into a state-of-the-art packaging plant. So that rather than asking other people to bottle our own beers and keg our own beers, we're able to do that and then actually able to do third party for other smaller brewers, which is a really good service and opportunity that we provide. That's been great for us. It was exactly the right thing to do because it's also enabled us to use the further space here to increase capacity. It is even in my time of when I first was going over to Bridgewater in early 2019, that whole area was just seeing significant expansion in terms of the developments and sites. It's a great trunking facility because of its vicinity to the M5 and that corridor as well. And it's great to see the area booming, to be honest, and where we also have pubs in that area, they've directly benefited from that. So yeah, it's quite remarkable. If you put time-lapse photography on all the different visits I've made, seeing just the continued investment and expansion.
Yeah, really interesting to get the perspective of it on the ground,
Yeah.
so to speak, but also to hear about the business case for investing in that plant rather than outsourcing it to someone else. Presumably, you looked at the returns around that. What were the drivers in terms of investing in that rather than
Yeah,
outsourcing?
it was the drivers were, yes, partly financial because outsourcing that costs us, but also it was partly service orientated because particularly when it comes to distribution, that's something that a lot of people have gone to third parties for. And I understand the reason why. Having your own fleet of trucks isn't something you can take lightly. Our brand and the nature of our business and our values means we think there's innate value in if you're an independent free trade operator and we're able to provide a service to you, you can get everything from us. It'll all come in one delivery at specific times in the week.
Mm.
You deal with the telesales who will know your name. You're not just a number. You'll deal with a sales manager who will come in and see you on a regular basis. And we think that's part of an overall holistic offer, that we think there is a place for. And it's one of the reasons why we've been so successful in that market. So you're having your beer delivered by somebody who is part of our team and understands our heritage and history. It's not just an outsourced delivery driver. And the packaging plant, yes, that was a significant investment. They take time to come through, but it now contributes brilliantly to our overall financial performance. So we're delighted that we did that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense and great, as you say, to have that end-to-end
Absolutely.
experience for
Yeah.
your customers effectively in that in your control,
Yeah.
which is, really important, isn't it? So I'm going to move on now to kind of bigger picture stuff, I
Yeah.
suppose, and talk a little bit about Somerset's economic growth strategy. It sets out an ambition for a more dynamic, greener, and more inclusive economy. But I just wonder, from your perspective as a business in Somerset, what you feel are the biggest opportunities for Somerset to achieve that over the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. The words ESG have been used quite a lot of businesses over the last few years. I think that's evolving at the moment because there are clearly pressures on business that are quite increasing from a cost-based point of view over the last number of years, particularly post-pandemic. So when people would ask us whether we have necessarily a distinct green strategy, we don't. We have an environmental strategy that links into our overall strategy of the business, and we're very clear that that has to make commercial sense for us, and it's integrated into our values and our ethos of what we're trying to do. In terms of what Somerset can do to assist us in that, I think principally most people in my position would be saying, make it easier for us to invest, make it easier from a planning point of view, and encourage the growth and expansion. We've got a government at the moment that talks about a growth agenda. I think business would raise a bit of an eyebrow at that comment at the moment. It's not particularly felt like that over the last years. I would be in a strong position to say we're a business that's doing really well. We're thriving within Somerset. Over the last 6 years, Butcombe Brewery on its own, outside of the pubs, has more than doubled its revenue. So we're highly profitable. We've reinvested back into the business. So our investor hasn't taken any money out of the business. We've grown substantially the number of people employed in the local area as a result. So all we're really looking for from Somerset is to encourage that and make it easier for us to do that. We're kind of fairly simple in that perspective.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's a fantastic achievement, particularly in the current climate, which is quite challenging, of course,
Yeah,
economically,
yeah,
before really for businesses and individuals. And it's great to hear as well your approach to sustainability. Personally, I find it quite challenging when businesses have a kind of separated strategy because I think you're absolutely right. It should contribute to the
totally.
commercials of the organisation rather than being seen as a drag or tick box that you have to achieve. So great to see that that's integrated. You talked earlier about sourcing some of your raw
Yeah.
materials locally, and all that makes economic sense, financial sense to you, but also is sustainable in terms of the footprint.
I think that's one of the things for me. Strategies will have longevity and will be successful if they link to the values of the business, the mission of the business, and also they make financial sense. We put solar panels on the roof of our distribution centre, not because we're nice people, but because it makes absolute financial sense to do it, particularly post the Ukraine crisis and the significant inflation we saw on utilities. And that's paid back brilliantly. It charges our trucks overnight, etc. Brilliant, fantastic. We work with local suppliers because we think that's what the market and the customer wants. That fits in perfectly into our strategy. And again, we run local pubs for local people, serving local food and drink wherever possible. Then you come back to some of our beef, for example, which has beef is one of those products that has a bit of a financial and ethical implication these days from an environmental point of view. We're very aware of that, but fundamentally, we want to serve great beef to our customers. Well, our beef is grass-fed, reared on meadows, only travels 7 miles from the point of where it's reared to where it's slaughtered and then immediately into butchers and into our pubs. That for us makes great environmental sense. It also means we can deliver a fantastic product to our customers as well. I know the team here worked really hard on it. I think it's interesting because over the last few years, a lot of companies have been at pains to say they have a roadmap to net zero. Our strategy is more around reducing waste and reducing our impact upon the environment. And a simple mission statement said we want to have a positive impact on the environment and the communities that we operate in. That we feel is a kind of a more realistic and slightly more honest objective because we don't have an offsetting strategy, would be one of my key points. It is a way of achieving a net zero, but you're not actually reducing your own, you're just offsetting it elsewhere. So that very much is our focus. We have a waste product from our brewing process that goes to a local farm. We use the local farm cheese back into our pubs. We just try and do things that for us are consistent and are achievable and link into what we try and do.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. So I guess again thinking about Somerset as any rural county faces in this, there are some demographics, some environmental challenges we've talked about a little bit. But particularly with Somerset, we talk a lot about issues related to youth retention and aging populations. I just wondered whether you're experiencing that in terms of your business or what your views on that are.
Yeah, I think in rural areas it is challenging. I think Somerset's got a very similar challenge because it's a lovely part of the world, one that I've got to know pretty well over the last years. I actually live in Suffolk, which there's quite a lot of similarities and commonalities with it. I would say this is more of a destination location from a tourism point of view, which is great. It's great to see people coming into the area. And it's got wonderful countryside, amazing food and drink, fantastic. I think it does present its challenges because We're a high recruiter in the area. We want to see young people coming into the industry and progress to do what we do. We have a large amount of undergraduates that work through us through their sixth form periods and then off into uni and then come back. We're delighted with that. That's great. It's part of our DNA is almost having the sons and daughters of our customers working within our local pubs is a really good thing to see. We want to encourage some of those people to progress a career in our business and then in hospitality. It's a wonderful business. You can do really well within it. It's really rewarding. But I would agree with you. You look at the customer base and the work base, and there's a bit of a difference between the two. As ever, I think in areas such as these, it does come back to how Somerset can encourage employment. Affordability of housing is always one of the key issues within that. If you wish to retain some of those people that have then grown up, qualified, achieved qualifications, how do they sustain working in the area with also living in the area and achieve some of those objectives that we would all want to do? So I don't think it's unique, but it is a challenge that I recognise from other kind of rural areas that we're familiar with.
Yes, and that makes perfect sense. So the flip side of that question is what role you think academic institutions locally, innovation centres, research partnerships, what role do they have in shaping that potential? And are we making the most of it locally?
That's a difficult one for me to judge, to be honest. I can only probably speak from my own perspective. I think where I've been pretty consistent for a while now, over a number of years, is I think where academic institutions can help business and in turn which can help local communities is really understand the needs of business as employers. I do think there's a little bit of divergence between the agenda that is being driven educationally versus actually what employers really want to see versus what then benefits the young people then coming through. The continued push and drive that everybody should go to university is one I've questioned now for a while. As somebody from who went to Bristol, who went into university and enjoyed the time thoroughly, I would just question that. We have a successful apprentice program within our business. We'd like to see more of that coming through in all parts of our business, both in our pubs, in our brewing space, over in distribution. And that's an agenda that I think academic institutions could do more and to encourage. It seems to me there seems to be a kind of a preference to see people progress through the traditional route still of GCSEs, A levels, and then off to degree. That's fine. That works for a lot of people. It also works, frankly, in a way that we get quite a lot of graduates still working in our business with a significant amount of debt and compare themselves to some of the apprentices who work through our business who are already now progressing in their careers who don't have that level of debt. I would just see a little bit of balance within that. And then I think anything that can be done of innovation and unique investors into the area, great. I think in turn will encourage people to stay around, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I was going to ask you about apprenticeships, so I'm glad you raised that because it strikes me that you have a really diverse need for skills here. Some kind of general,
Yeah.
running a business skills, of course, the same as any other, but there's some very niche skills that you need around the brewing side,
Yeah.
particularly, I'm sure. So, yeah, interesting to understand that you're working through apprenticeships in those areas. Is that across the board?
Yeah, just one, and we really includes everybody from going through from level two all the way up to level seven apprenticeships. And some of those people at the higher end, of some of those people have been with our business a long time now, but they're now exploring how they reach those higher level of apprenticeships through our business. And I think it's a fantastic way to develop people. You're right, there is absolutely quite a broad spread in skill sets that we would need. We've got really high quality chefs, so we want to see young people progressing through that. We've got a production facility just next to where we're sitting now. It's a real skill set in itself. Some of the qualifications that people have gone through, they are fundamentally scientists, yeah, by another term. And then we've got a packaging facility, of which is state of the art and it has a real requirement and skill set, and the qualifications the teams have achieved there to do that it is immense, something I'm not even close to. So it is a broad base. We have marketing skills here. Data is something that we're really spending a lot of time on now. So we've got data analysts working on our customer base, how we drive frequency of visits. I always think it's fascinating. These businesses that people can drive past down little lanes can look quite calm, quite etc. There's a lot going on in there, and there are some really exciting businesses around as well.
Yeah, fascinating. Thank you. So my final question for you, really linked to that, is what message you'd like to send to young people who are leaving school at the moment thinking about the jobs market?
I think, I mean, I'm an absolute glass half full person, so I'm an optimist. I think employers such as ourselves always want to see really good young people coming through the business. You know, it makes our day, frankly, when I'm out in trading, out in the pubs or out in the different parts of the business, when I meet young people who are either with us for a period of time because they're off to something else, which is great. Or actually, if they've said, no, this is exactly what I want to do and progress with, I think that's great to see. And we want to see more of that. I think the jobs market is undoubtedly toughening up. I think that's going to continue. AI has lots of benefits, but one of which is already begun to really impact the entry graduation jobs market. I think that will continue. I think, therefore, it's just for me, young people to be, this may sound like a contradiction, be open minded to opportunities and where they may come, but also be quite clear and driven on what they want to do and not necessarily consider that the same traditional route is the best path. I think you can get to wherever you want to be with a variety of route and with experience. And I am inclined to think at the moment that the opportunity to get into business and then get cracking early are probably, I think, advantageous now.
That's fantastic, and that's a great point to leave this episode on. So, Jonathan, thank you very much for hosting us here at Butcombe Brewery today. It's been lovely to meet you, and
Yeah,
thanks again.
thanks so much for your time. It's been great. Thanks, Sarah.